they rarely sue individuals in any meaningful way when the entity will settle. This is largely a function of resource constraints, but also risk aversion and a willingness to take the course of least resistance. Holy shit. Now there was an editorial in the New York Times that actually called this out. And if the New York Times is criticizing government for something, you know it's really bad, because they're just the fucking bootlickers. But they're saying it is a dark day for the rule of law. No doubt that the wrongdoing at HSBC was serious and pervasive, but the bank is simply too big, too powerful, too important to prosecute. We lose too many jobs. Sorry. So there's another quote from Glenn Greenwald I want to share. To hear our politicians and our press tell it, the conclusion is inescapable. We're far better off when political and financial elites, and they alone, are shielded from criminal accountability. It has become a virtual consensus among the elites that their members are so indispensable to the running of American society that vesting them with immunity from prosecution, even for the most egregious crimes, is not only in their interest, but in our interest too. Prosecutions, courtrooms, and prisons, it's hinted, and sometimes even explicitly stated, are for the rabble, like the street-side drug peddlers we occasionally glimpse from our car windows, not for the political and financial leaders who manage our nation and fuel our prosperity. It is simply too disruptive, distracting, and unjust, we are told, to subject them to the burden of legal consequences. Scary shit, but that's where we're at. You got to step back and realize who's really in charge here. But this is just one more big slap in the face. We're not going to end the criminality. We're going to fine it and allow it to continue to be institutionalized. Great.
Exactly. So you issue these people a fine, but they have the blessing of government to get all of this money, and it doesn't. It's not going to stop as long as the institutions both exist as they stand. I don't differentiate. We always say the Federal Reserve is a private bank is something that a lot of people say, but it's like there's no real line there. They all have the benefit of each other, and they're in it together to get what they want.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. Like you can parse this out like, well, technically the Federal Reserve is a public-private partnership. People say it's a privately owned bank. Like, no, it's not. But if it's owned by the same people that own your congressman, it's the same fucking people.
Yeah.
Like
your government is privately owned too. Just because the Federal Reserve pays property taxes in New York doesn't mean that they are not a government agency, folks. They can pay property taxes. How do they pay the property taxes? They print the fucking money, dummy. What did you think was going to happen? Yeah, can you pay us some taxes? Sure, we'll pay some fucking taxes.
Yeah, how much you need. All right, 403, you're on the air. Where are you calling from?
Hey, Adam, it's Stephen calling. Leprechaun 1984 from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Hey,
Canuckistan.
Canuckistan in the house.
Absolutely. Just wanted to talk about your main question of the day here.
Yes.
I figure the only way you're going to get people to stop shooting up, schools, hospitals, whatever the fuck, you got to teach people to be able to recognize psychopaths, psychopathy. You got to teach people to recognize mental illness and understand that not everyone has a sense of empathy, and be able to out these people soon enough that they don't get a hold of firearms, explosives, and are recognized for potentially being people who would commit mass murder.
That's a great answer. Now you're getting close to what I was going to say. If I could change one thing, but if you're saying that you're now thinking a little outside the box for myself. If you could change one thing, and it would be to teach everyone to recognize mental illness and to be able to act on that and help people out. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
That's got to be at least as good as my one thing.
I think that the mental illness thing. The mental illness thing is, the definitions are so skewed, and we touched on this when I called in briefly before.
Whoa, hold up. We're not when we say mental health, we're not saying turn to the APA necessarily, right, and the DSM-5, which tells you that obedience disability disorder, whatever the fuck it is, if you're not an adequate enough bootlicker, that's something we can give you a pill for.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And they give you a pill to make you a sociopath so that you're not upset after your wife dies, which would normally make you a murder suspect.
Right. So
I just...
Yeah, killing the pharmaceutical industry that, creates half the psychopaths in our society is the first step. So it's not an easy thing to change, but it's certainly something that would make a difference, I think.
Oh, well, I guess
anyway.
Now you got my answer. I'm just going to reveal this early. My answer is one thing: you get the government out of the pharmaceutical industry. Really,
Absolutely.
really, really simple, because then you would take out the unjust profit motives for overprescribing these drugs that are causing so many people to go crazy. And I think there might be a place for that. You know, there is a place. There is a place for drugs to control mental illness, and that balance needs to be struck.
Cannabis does a great job.
Yes, cannabis does an incredible job. There needs to be a way that is handled through the demands of the market, with the accountability of the market, without the government coming in, screwing up the incentives, taking out the liability, and making for unjustifiable profits for pharmaceutical companies because of intellectual property primarily. All right, thank you so much for the call.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Adam. See ya. Thanks.
940, you're on the air. What's your name? Where are you calling from? 940, that's
I'm just listening in, Adam.
What's that?
I'm just listening in.
Oh, you're just listening in. People call
Yeah.
to just listen to the show. Well, I hope you're having a good time. And it looks like our guest is ready. Is this Mr. Shulman? Is it Ivan? What's going on here? All right. Our guest tonight is J. Neil Shulman, multiple award-winning author of a dozen novels and nonfiction books, beginning with his 1979 Prometheus Hall of Fame award-winning novel, Alongside Night. He's been endorsed by Milton Friedman and Ron Paul, the writer of the screen adaptation and producer-director of the second feature film, Alongside Night, which has just wrapped its first 2 weeks of filming on location in Las Vegas.